So again, I was asked now to talk about startups and raise the question whether they are the better research vehicle. I have to admit, I cannot give you later an answer, yes or no, right? What they're an interesting research vehicle for sure. And I thought that maybe from our experience, we can tell a little bit what we have done in the scene of startups and why we did this and how this helped our research, and from that on derive some questions towards the end. So here's a list of some of the companies that I've started with the first one, Acticum, in 1999. And I took them as an example, maybe what you can do there. The reason why we started the very first startup, I cannot even recall. I think it was frustration when we did our PhD that we did great research, but we knew that whatever we do, it will not be implemented by anybody in the world, right? It was cool research, but there was nothing tangible, and that made us somehow frustrated in one end, but on the other end, we wanted to do something with the knowledge we had, right? And then there are other companies, and I will go through this a little bit to explain you what we have done there and what we did with this. So if you want to group them a little bit, it is like the who is who in topics that were up to date, where you could create companies. So the first one was really on the communication side. When 3G was just entering the scene, frequencies were sold out with a big bummer in the market when there was no money anymore because the frequencies were so high. And then later with the, I think...
Frank,
yeah.
Short comment. There's some weird sound in your mic.
Yeah, that's true. I hear this as well, but I don't know why. This is the same mic as before.
Okay, well then we just go on. We can still understand you.
Yeah, it's also annoying for me. It's so crispy and so scratchy, right? Sorry for that. Just to say that the very first two were beginning of 2000, and then there's a 10 years gap because there was no money in the market, right? And from there on, there was a quite intense rate of creating those startups. And from communication, as I said, there was the area of the mobile apps. I think everybody remembers that. Network coding is more something like IP-based things about information theory. And then something what happened was mobile clouds, and now we are moving to the topic that we have here in the excellence cluster, if you remember my talk before. So if I go through this, the very first one was really classical communication. It's a software that was built to compress headers. That was something that happened inside the IETF, and we just implemented it, and suddenly you find out you're among a few companies in the world that have this implementation. Nowadays, I think we are the only freelancers that can sell this kind, and we are still doing this, right? There was a bunch of other researchers who did it. I think 5 people that did research. After 3 months into the company, I think only one guy were doing research. The rest tried to maneuver the company through the things like tax, like customer acquisition, and all this stuff. So the moment you think about a company, you think you make cool stuff. But in the end, 80% is really daily work, and you have to also maintain a company suddenly, right? Then right after we had a good idea and said, and I'm just telling it because this company is not there anymore, right? Acticum is still on the market. The second one is not there anymore. The idea was that we had a van, we had satellite links, and we sold Wi-Fi access. So whenever there was a venue, an event, whatever, they could hire us for tons of money, and we put up satellite links, and they could show that they have Wi-Fi. It was more a gadget to have for concert or politicians that want to have a venue. That was quite interesting, and it was there until I think 3G really hit the market. After that, that was over and out. I'm just telling you this, have this in mind, because sometimes things come back, right? It also shows that not all the companies you do will survive, right? Some of the stuff still there, others are not. And after that, we went to a totally different area. We made mobile apps. There were also companies that we did for compressing SMS. And now you would say, why should somebody compress SMS? That was a time when people had to pay for a single SMS, and they could only write 1,133 words, characters. And we could then triple the capacity of an SMS with a research pattern that we did among some researchers around the world. Was quite interesting. Maybe I should also have listed that here, right? But then suddenly we were in this mobile app business, and a lot of people knew us that we can do mobile apps, which at the time was not so common. We had a great deal with Nokia. They were sending us more or less every phone they produced, just do testing and try something out. And then one of the mobile apps that we did is gather hats, right? That was a really cool thing. You see these plastic hats. I still have them here in the office. You could buy in every media markt in Europe. You open them and you have this collectibles, and the collectibles have a unique ID. And if you type them in the mobile app, you can then play with these hats against others, trading them. You can play with Bluetooth. In the stuff, and you can even hunt these faces with augmented reality on the streets. It was way pre-Pokemon, right? And that was a big thing. We had, for example, with Nokia a deal. We had 300 million pre-installs, and we then suddenly come to a point where we want to make these phones, the Nokia phones, talk to the iPhones that came up at the time. And then suddenly you have to learn so many things about cloud services. You have to learn something about latency, right? Latency is something important nowadays for our research. How do you fake low latency, right? I think 2 years of my life I spent in the game to understand how to pretend that we have low latency communication, because the people played against each other. Unfortunately, even this company did not make it. After 3 years, Nokia went down, right? They decided to leave the burning platform for mobile, for Windows Mobile, which was not a good idea. But also for us, this was the end of the game. But if you look from the research perspective, there was something really good in it. We learned so many things, and we could even take this apart to bring to other things. Then there were other mobile apps like YouMe. I call this the time of adult toys. I will not have pictures for that. Nevertheless, we built very small electronics, Bluetooth-wise, and get them attached to the iPhone Imperium was really a big thing for us. And then there was a time when we did, together with Murray Medar and others from MIT, Caltech, also Tracy Ho, we created a bunch of companies like Codon, Steinwurf, Chocolate Cloud, that were all companies that dealt with network coding. And for example, Chocolate Cloud, what they create, and this is a product of them, you can have something like Dropbox using other cloud services like Dropbox, like Google, whatever. And there's an over-the-top cloud service where you can really code your data and save that at certain places in different clouds to make it super secure, right? So even somebody who would, even Dropbox who would look into that could not understand what it is, because it's coded information. Steinwurf is more not cloud, it's more on the transport side, where Codon is more an IP firm about network coding. So this was really a huge imperium of companies that all belong to each other, right? And here when you talk about research, we had some people working in the company and some in the university. We had even people in the company that made a PhD, and people at the university that did not do a PhD, and vice versa. So that was more or less a very interesting time also for research. You got some, you could say, some extra funding. Interesting is how you deal with your university to get this clean. If you do it in the dark, it's never a good idea, right? So you have to find out something there. Then Went back a little bit on cloud services, and we had one company called PhoneDeck. So the network coding companies are still there, by the way, right? So PhoneDeck is something that was a good idea where you combine your phone with a web browser tool or with your PC. So whenever somebody calls you on the phone, you get a notification on your screen. You can pick it up on the screen. You can write SMS on the screen. You can handle your contacts on the screen. So this dualism, there was something in that what interests us most. And parts of that you can now find in other companies that are using parts of it. I think from this perspective, it was a little bit too big as a single product, but the individual things that worked. So then we entered the time when I was already here in Dresden. Bundlebots, their claim is to democratize the coding of robotics. So what you see there is the guy with a toy in the hand. He's just showing the robot what to do. For example, soldering something here or gluing something at the place. And he will perform this many times. And after he showed this to the robot will take over the task. And the human will supervise it and say, now it's okay, and you can go on. So no coding, it's a no-code paradigm for robots. This company started in 2017. The same time we had a huge proposal prepared for the German government, and both of them succeeded. So we have now a huge group at the university think about how learning of machines and human take place. And then we have Bundlebots, who has a very single product in democratizing the skills of programming the robots. As you can see here in the picture, there are now over 150 people. The picture is a little bit older. So it's a fast-growing company. They have a lot of success within industry because a lot of people are asking the robots to be reprogrammable. So it's very hard to program them by hand. They want to just show it to them. Messmerize is a company that is doing wireless mesh. I told you before, wireless mesh was one of my biggest problems ever in research to make it run. These guys really made a product out of it that you have resilient, low latency wireless mesh communication, which is good for cars. It's good for industry robots. And they took a different route than the Bundlebots guys, even though they started more or less the same time. The Bundlebot guys started with venture capital money, while the Messmerize guys got this Exist program. It's the starting package from the government. Money-wise, more or less the same, but here it is more like that they really created a product and now are starting with VC money. Campus Genius, and now I'm coming back to the second one. While in the second company, we wanted to provide Wi-Fi access in a mobile way, that we go somewhere and provide Wi-Fi. Campus Genius is a company that provides 5G networks. And this is, you don't need a satellite link, which was very expensive at the time. Here you have all the network functions like cloud within the box. You have the coverage, so the 5G technology and the cloud services in the box. And you can bring this to companies for private networks or to countrysides, and also can do something with that. The research side here is crystal clear, right? You have a full-blown 5G network. We have now multiple of those with different formation from different manufacturers that we can test out. And that's very interesting. We also combine them with robotics. Also, Bundlebots is part of that, where we can go and showcase their product together with 5G. And we have a group of more than 10 people that just maintain us 5G networks, which is important for us to test out new stuff, right? And if you want to have innovation in the box, you can bring it to them and you can test it out right away without going to network operators and so on. So as you can see, after wireless LAN mobile, we had Campus Genius, things come back. Last but not least, the newest member in the family is Pneumatic. There we use some topics that we have in the research cluster, CT, so Center of Tactile Internet, where we make intelligent clothing. So here you see a glove with a lot of electronics. In the future, there will be bendable electronics like the glove on the right, but then you don't see anything anymore. And we use this for localization of humans. and also for skill training. So what Bundlebots is doing with this tool, you can do it here with the human hand. And this is the normal tool that everybody is using nowadays, right? So this has a short idea where the companies are, what they are doing, and we could now go through them and understand how do we really use this as a research vehicle. I think some of them was clearer than others, but I brought some points, right? First of all is the question, how did we finance them, right? The very first company, I didn't even know what venture capital is, honestly. Right? There were banks that wanted to give us money and whatever, but we did not do that. We just used Siemens in order to give them, they gave us jobs like counseling jobs whatsoever. And then what we did is we used the money to build our own products. So first we did consultancy, and with the money, the products. That takes a while. And it's also a risky path because you have talent people and whatever that have to do a lot of work to get something on the street. On the other side, you also learn a lot, right? It was not a bad time for us at the time because I remember that we had to explain Siemens all the 3 GPP standards, what they mean. We built even phones with them together. So it was a great time to understand. I mean, nowadays you can make an app, but who had the chance to build a whole phone with the UI together with the security stack, with the Wi-Fi stack? That was a cool project, and we also, I think everybody who was in there did something later meaningful, at least, right? But as we went through this list and the time goes by, more and more we understood venture capitalist. It's a tricky vehicle because what they want to do is, of course, they want to have their investment back, right? They want to have, you have to not give them 10%, they want to have tenfold money back on what they invest. Which on the one end hinders you to make the research if you do the research just for fun, right? But if the research is your product, if the innovation is keeping your competitors away, then you have a good story, and then you are in the same boat with the VCs, and they will also say that's the way to go, right? So the funding, the initial seed funding, is a very interesting part. Now, when you want to have money for your research, I mean, everybody knows that the academia way, right? You have an idea, you write a proposal, and if you get accepted, and it depends where you put it in, the acceptance rate sometimes very low, then you only have to do your research. You don't have any direction, right? Sometimes they don't even ask you. Sometimes you have to write a report in the end. The only thing is, will you get an extension for this funding, or do you have to go for new funding schemes and so on? And the only thing you do while you do your research, sometimes you publish your result, right? And only if there are only a few researchers, to be honest, that are really lucky enough to have enough money and to maintain one direction of their research, and others have to hop, right? And that breaks their research career sometimes. Right? So if you do the startup, I mean, it also starts with an idea. Sometimes it can be the same idea, sometimes it's totally different. And what you need normally is only a 10 slides, right? Not more than that. And you go to some VCs, if you know them, there's a list of them, and you talk to them, and maybe you have to pitch your idea to them. If they like it, maybe you get your financing. And when you get the financing, you can create a team. This very quickly. And that's the good thing about money on the left and on the right. If you want to spend 1,000 euro in the university, it's a nightmare, right? If you want to spend it in a startup, easy peasy, right? You have a guy that looks over your taxes, that's it, right? But you also have to think about what I'm doing here has to lead to a product, right? So your research is already bound to that product. The other thing is that you can combine both. There are some research projects that will need some small, medium enterprises to be part of the project team. And then it becomes interesting to see how you couple them, because it's also one way to finance your work inside the startup. So here's some reasons why startups can be an option for research, right? some topics are too early for research agencies, right? I named some of them that would never be paid by the research agency, right? If you think about this gadgets, the recollectibles, the scatterheads thingy, no way about this, right? Then some are even too early, which means you have a good idea, but the time is not right. Inside the research agencies, they have never heard about the topic and it will take time. Then it's good to go to the VCs, and if you're lucky, you get the money, right? And if you have this, let's say, DNA to create startups, it's really a great place for talented students, right? You can take them once they're ready, let them go in the startup, so they stay closer to your chair, right? The problem nowadays is more that PhD students don't want to finish their PhD anymore, right? They see the road out there and say, why should I make a PhD? And it's not that I'm running out of arguments. It becomes only harder to convince them to stay there. And it's also let's say the flow that you get in a startup that's so interesting for them, because everything works right away. There's no let's say people in the university holding you back and whatsoever. So they get unleashed. It's also a great way to motivate PhD student to come to your chair, right? Because you can say, hey, you can do this together if this works out. Some advice is also, don't worry to fail, because you have seen not all of the companies that made it, right? But the people that failed in one of the startups, it's not that they got burned. You take them and make new startups with them because you trained them. They're talented people, right? And as I said before, some research agency asked for SMEs to be there. Let me also say why not an option for research. As I said before, if the guys use the research and the innovation to create a product and they have the product, then money is an issue, right? Then they go for the product, they go for the money, and sometimes forget to innovate, right? That's then the job of the professor to do that. I hope that Yannis is not kicking me out. One more slide. Here I put some of the companies, a small description. I think, Yannis, you also want to have the slides, right?
Oh, yes, of course.
Yeah. So I will send you this. I made all these, a little bit of description on that you know what it is. In general, I told you I cannot tell you whether they are the better, if startups are the better research vehicle, but I think they are a great parallel tool to deal with your research. For my personal belief and for my personal life, it was always great to have both, right? The university to do stuff that maybe, people might be interested in 10, 20 years, but also the startup to get something quick on the street and to get a big chunk of money and try something out in a very big environment. So I hope that I could inspire you with that. And we all have one company in quantum within the next 12 months, right? It's easy, just do it. Thank you.